Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Bland weekly update. They the week goes by so fast that I feel like I just spoke to you guys earlier this week, um, but it was last week. And again, a lot has happened both personally for me as well as in the world. Personally, I want to talk about what happened yesterday. I represent, along with my partner Ronnie Richter, a great guy named Brian Musgrave. On Up until February 10th, Brian was just a guy that was married to his wife Jen with two beautiful kids, 23-year marriage, and never been in trouble with the law. And on February 10th, Nancy Mace decided that she was going to go on the House floor and wreck Brian Musgrave's life. She had a tumultuous relationship with her ex fiance, Patrick Bryant, and towards the end of 2023, when they broke off their engagement, they had tremendous disagreements on property that they bought together and how much Nancy should get as a result of their breakup. And she went on a campaign to seek revenge against Patrick. She wanted $500,000 from him. She threatened litigation against him. She enlisted the services of her ex campaign manager, according to his deposition, Wesley Donahue, to try to blackmail Patrick Bryant. She was soliciting the services of a lot of different women to come forward. Evidently, she had broken into Patrick Bryant's phone and found allegedly a lot of naked pictures and videos of women in compromising positions. And the only thing that Brian had to do with this whole sordid mess was he was a longtime best friend with Patrick Bryant, and they owned a condominium on the Isle of Palms together. And in that condominium was a Google camera, probably the size of this water bottle, that was on top of a refrigerator in the kitchen on Plainview that Patrick put in there to monitor what happened in the apartment when he wasn't there. If his son would come over with his friends. Camera was in plain view. Wasn't these type of cameras that you hear about that are, the eye of a teddy bear or in a potted plant or in an air conditioning vent to surreptitiously record people. It was in plain view. I have them all over my house where we like to see our dogs and what they're doing when we're not there. They're in plain sight. And Patrick received a phone call 10 minutes before Nancy Mace was going to go on the House floor. And when she did, she had a poster that put him up with Patrick Bryan, Eric Osborne, and another gentleman, and of course Brian Musgrave's photograph. And she had on top of it sexual predators, rapists, human traffickers. Brian Musgrave had done no such thing. He was given 10 minutes notice of that this speech was going to come. Nancy Mace had released the speech prior to going on the House floor. She gave an hour-long speech. She talked about her own experience of being raped and sexually violated. She talked about legislation that she wanted to do. And afterwards, she took that poster, put it on top of her door outside of her congressional office for everybody to see, so that the world could see that Brian Musgrave was labeled as a rapist, a human predator, a predator, sexual predator, and a human trafficker. She went on podcasts, television interviews. She did internet tweets and messaging about Brian Musgrave. We asked her to cease and desist. She would not do it. We asked her to come forward with her proof that Brian was a rapist, a trafficker, and a sexual predator. She did not do it. We filed a lawsuit against Nancy Mace. We were aware that there is a constitutional protection for House members, that if they're on the House floor, or congressional members, senators, and they're on the floor of the House of Representatives or the Senate. The speech and debate clause protects them from being sued for defamation or anything, but we argued that it doesn't protect you for actions that you take outside the well of the Senate or the well of the House floor. Things that Nancy Mace had done, continuing to defame Brian Musgrave. There is a doctrine called the Westfall Doctrine, which came out in 1988, which Congress enacted a law that said even outside the Congress, if they are arguably doing something in connection with the scope of their employment, they're federal employees, they're employed by the federal government, essentially, that's who pays them, and they're within the scope of their employment, or they're doing something that's legislatively related, they are protected. It's kind of like a qualified immunity. But that we believe that if you're acting for your own personal interests and your own personal motivations, or with bad motives and bad intent and not in good faith, and you're just absolutely slandering somebody, that's not in connection with your legislative duties and not within the course and scope of your employment. It's like a police officer. If a police officer stops you, he's on the highway within the course and scope of your employment. If he sexually assaults you, that is veering off, not within the course and scope of your employment, where he would have liability. And then after he sexually assaults you, writes you a ticket for your highway violation, that would again be coming back in within the course and scope of his duties. Nancy Mace went to the congressional attorneys. They agreed to represent her, so taxpayers were paying for her defense. And she maintained that she had an absolute right to say anything that she wanted about Brian Musgrave, even if it was false, because it was connection with her legislative function of enacting or putting forth potential bills that dealt with voyeurism and sexual abuse. There's no allegation whatsoever that Brian Musgrave filmed Nancy Mace, had any naked pictures of Nancy Mace, saw naked pictures or videos of Nancy Mace, that he had any access to the camera in what it filmed that was inside the condominium in plain view, in broad, big camera, that he was able to access it or had the passcode. She merely called him a predator, a rapist, and a trafficker simply because he owned the condominium with Patrick Bryant, and the camera was there. Nancy Mace chose to have sexual relations with Patrick Bryant, I guess outside the bedroom, in the living room, or in the kitchen, so that she was filmed naked. She would have presumably seen the camera with the green light on, and she could have turned it off, or nobody forced her to have sex out in the living room area. And certainly there wasn't any action on the part of Brian Musgrave. As you can imagine, being called a sexual predator, a human trafficker, and a rapist will affect somebody's livelihood. It will embarrass the family. His lovely wife, Jen, that he's been married to for almost 24 years, his two lovely children are now pariahs. It's all over the internet. And just so everybody knows, when the speech and debate clause came out in the late 1700s, there wasn't TV, there wasn't internet. You barely had a newspaper that you could deliver 10 miles away. And when the Westfall Doctrine was enacted by Congress in the late 80s, there was no internet. Today we have the internet, and so a lie travels halfway around the world before truth can lace up its shoes. And so we had our hearings yesterday in front of the United States District Court in Charleston, in front of Judge Richard Gergel. Unfortunately, Judge Gergel held that pursuant to the speech and debate clause, pursuant to the Westfall Doctrine, that Nancy Mace had absolute immunity from being sued personally, that she couldn't be named as a defendant, that the United States government would have to be a named party, and that if a lawsuit went forward, it would be under the Federal Tort Claims Act, which excludes slander and defamation as causes of action, and offers very, very limited scope of recovery, and granted Nancy Mace absolute immunity, that she could do anything she wanted regarding Brian Musgrave. She can call him a rapist, a pedophile, a bank robber, whatever. Doesn't have to be in good faith, doesn't have to be true. As long as she says, my name is Nancy Mace, I'm a member of the House of Representatives, and I have certain legislation that's pending. Judge Gergel held that 99.5% of her motives could be bad, ill intent, to harm and false, as long as there was a scintilla touch that it had something to do with her being in the House of Representatives. And he dismissed her lawsuit, the lawsuit of Brian Musgrave. And I argued, and I was extremely visibly upset when I said to the court that this is patently unfair, that Nancy Mace can do this, that tomorrow she can put my picture up and Bronnie Richter's picture up, and she could call us pedophiles, even though it's not true. And if she's doing it in connection with her legislative duties or functions or within the scope of her employment at a town hall meeting, there's nothing that we could do about it, that we couldn't sue her at all for slander. I don't recognize our world at this point. She should certainly be entitled to qualified immunity. The judge was concerned, well, what's going to end up happening is if we don't give him immunity, then everybody's going to sue every congressperson alive, and they're going to be in depositions and they won't be able to do their jobs. And Judge Gergel said, I'd rather have a world where there's immunity than a world where there's not immunity. There should be qualified immunity. They should be qualified to have immunity, but it can be overcome if the actions are so egregious like they are in this case, with Nancy Mace destroying the life and reputation of a good man, Brian Musgrove, by calling him a rapist, a pedophile, and a trafficker. I got outside. We made statements to the press, releasing a press release today. I couldn't do that to Judge Gergel. I couldn't do that to Nancy Mace. If I started doing that and put them on a poster, there's federal statutes that prevent you from being to harass or threaten a federal employee, but she can do it to us. Doesn't seem fair, does it? Seems like a double standard. Why do they need protection if they're always going to be honest and do the right thing? Right is right, wrong is wrong. There's no wrong and right, no right and wrong. Right faucet is cold water, left faucet is hot water, and water rolls down the drain. I mean, that's the universal truth. So it's a sad state of affairs that we have. I think that the federal court yesterday had an opportunity to tell the world that congressional Congress people are not any different than ordinary citizens. Yes, there should be some protection, but they put their pants on at the same time and the same way as we do, and that they should not be permitted to over and over and over again say things that are not true and destroy somebody's life and damage them, and there be no recourse. I think that the court yesterday, Judge Gergel, weakened the nation. Extremely disappointed in his decision, and we're going to decide what we're going to do. Moving on, today, another shot heard around the world. Donald Trump's $540 million penalty that he got at the trial brought by Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, for him lying about the values of his real estate on bank loans and in tax assessment hearings, was overturned by the New York Court of Appeals. The entire verdict was overturned for being an excessive penalty, but not the fraud finding. So it's going to continue on in an appeal. He's found liable for fraud, and I guess there's going to have to be another hearing on the assessment of damages. Donald Trump just keeps winning. I've never seen anybody that is more Teflon than he is, that he will win. He wins mostly all of his cases on appeal. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So the big story was last Friday, the summit in Alaska with Putin. Remember, Trump had given last Friday's deadline being, unless there's a ceasefire, there's going to be heavy sanctions put against Russia. There wasn't a ceasefire at the summit. Trump decided that we're no longer going to pursue a ceasefire with Ukraine. It's going to be a major peace plan. We're going to go right to the table to get a peace plan. And so every day since then, there's been bombing in Ukraine. Putin got everything he wanted. He didn't have to do a ceasefire. He got legitimacy by walking a red carpet with President Trump, that he can show that even though that he's charged as a war criminal, and he's been a pariah to the world, hasn't had really any dignitary meetings except with Chairman Xi of China and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Now he's being welcomed by our United States president on United States soil. They were very friendly with each other. Trump says that he considers him a friend. Trump said there wouldn't be any sanctions, no secondary sanctions, which are really important because that would penalize countries like India and Brazil that buy fuel and oil from Russia. It just really was a little bit distressing, but then I give Trump credit, a lot of credit, because not any president could have pulled off that kind of meeting so quickly. Biden never tried it to end the war. And then on Monday, he met in the Oval Office with Zelensky of Ukraine and all the European leaders from Italy, France, England, Finland, and Germany in the Oval Office. It's amazing that he was able to put that together. And this time Zelensky showed up in a suit, was respectful to Trump, gave him a golf club from one of the Ukraine soldiers that lost their leg. But at the end of the day, nothing was agreed to. Trump is trying to have a meeting where it's going to be Zelensky and Putin together. And then if they can agree on something, then it'll be trilateral where Trump will get involved. But right now, there's no ceasefire. There is everyday bombing will continue. And this is what Putin wants. He owns, Russians occupy about 20% of the land in Ukraine right now. So Trump has backed away from his threats. But again, I do give him credit for trying to end the war. He is making efforts all over the globe, whether it's in with Iran and Israel, whether it's with Israel and Gaza, to try and get peace. And if he can get some kind of peace in Ukraine, again, I said this before, he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. The Missouri AG was appointed as the new deputy director of the FBI. So this could signal the end of Dan Bongini being the deputy director. Now there's two deputy directors essentially doing the same job, splitting the duties. This Missouri Attorney General was a Trumpster from the start, a MAGA guy who went out and campaigned and said that the election was stolen in 2020. He never did anything differently than just be a general counsel for one of the political parties, doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience. So it does look like that Dan Bongino is going to somehow exit from being the deputy director because he is big on the Epstein case and that the administration should be turning over documents to the public so that they could see Donald Trump's involvement and all the other people in the Epstein matter. Henry McMaster sent over 200 National Guard to Washington, D.C., along with a lot of the other red southern states, Mississippi, Alabama. What we're seeing is the public is starting to feel better about seeing the National Guard there, some of the public. But a lot of the National Guard aren't going to the southeast part of Washington, D.C. or the other high crime areas. They're spending their time in a lot of the areas where there's tourists. Restaurant reservations and patronage of restaurants are down since the Guard showed up. But again, Donald Trump's on the right side of this. These type of issues of crime are personal, they're anecdotal, and he is doing something to try to make the city safer. Trump said that he's going to sign a presidential order that will say that there is no more paper ballots in elections, that you can't do mail-in paper ballots. That's a state right issue. It's never going to be enforced. He doesn't have the right to do it. It's kind of interesting that the Republican principle was that everyone should leave voting issues up to the states and not federalize it. But now Trump wants to get involved and federalize that there can't be any more mail-in voting. Trump's approach that I'm starting to see when he's rounding up people in these urban areas, that he's sweeping up a lot of veterans. It turns out that veterans are about 22% of the homeless in our country. The other thing is, this week, Trump called himself, believe it or not, a war hero on a radio interview that he gave this week. I think that is stolen valor. He's certainly a peaceful leader when he's trying to settle these wars, but he's not a war hero. He didn't put on a uniform. I did not put on a uniform. I didn't go to the battlefield. He was a draft dodger with flat feet in the 1960s. He never served, and I think it's a disgrace that he calls himself a war hero. The Texas Democrats came back from their 2-week leave from Texas so that the Republican Party in Texas couldn't get a quorum to enact their redistricting plan to have 5 more Republican seats replace 5 Democratic seats as Donald Trump wanted. They finally came back. They had the quorum. They voted. There's going to be a redistricting of 5 seats that most likely will give 5 more Republican House members. The Texas Democrats feel like they accomplished what they needed to accomplish, which is now the public is attuned to what is being done in these Republican states. California and New York and Illinois are taking action to turn Republican seats into Democratic seats through redistricting. So this is something that is the Texas Democrats feel like that they brought to the attention of the public, and that they're gonna fight the redistricting in court. It's pretty neat now to see Gavin Newsom act like he's Trump. He's trolling Trump on his X account. He's doing things in all cap letters, and at the end he's saying, "Thank you very much for your attention to this matter," like Trump does. You know, do I like Gavin Newsom? I do not. Do I think he's a good governor? I do not. But I do think that he is standing up to Trump in a way that I haven't seen any other Democrat do. And the only way that you could stand down a bully is you got to slap a bully. You got to be a bully to a bully. Is he the guy in 2028 that's going to be able to carry the mantle to beat the MAGA candidate, whether it's J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis or some other Republican like-minded MAGA candidate? I don't know. But to beat Donald Trump or beat the MAGA in 2028 and win the midterm elections, the Democrats need to roll up their sleeve and do bare knuckle politics. Yesterday, like I said, Judge Gergel, who's really a Democratic judge, he was a plaintiff's attorney. What Democrats try to do is they try to act like Republicans to make Republicans think, oh, okay, they're principled. It doesn't happen that way. The Republicans never give the Democrats credit for acting in a way, whether they're following the rule of law or they're doing something conservative. The Democrats need to fight tooth and nail against the Republicans. The Republicans are trying to redistrict this country to limit the Democrats' ability to overturn Congress in the midterms. And I don't agree with it. I do not agree with politicizing redistricting. It should be tied to a census that's done every 10 years. But if the Republicans in Texas and the Republicans in Missouri are going to change Democratic seats, then in every Democratic state where the Democrats control the seats and control the representation in those states, they need to do redistricting and do it for politically motivated reasons and let the courts figure it out. The long-awaited criminal investigations into the Clinton, Obama, and Bidens are underway. Remember, I told you that Ed Martin, who was the U.S. attorney for D.C., that was not fully appointed, and they appointed Gene Piero from Fox News. Well, he was transferred to the Justice Department to to head up a department of violation of civil rights and go after and seek retribution that Donald Trump said he was going to do before election against all the people that had to do with the Russiagate and all the impeachments. And so Clinton is being investigated for the Russia dossier. Obama is being investigated because of he went out and said that Russia influenced and interfered with our elections. He never said that it had an outcome. He said that they did interfere, but he's being investigated. And so is Joe Biden, obviously being investigated for all the things that Hunter Biden did with Burisma. So Ed Martin said that the Clintons and Bidens and the Obamas should check their mailboxes. Last Friday, Pam Bondi turned back the control of the D.C. Police Department to the police chief, but there is still a work sharing agreement that is going on. Alex Jones, the InfoWars, remember he got nailed for over $1 billion judgment in the Sandy Hook case. They are starting to liquidate his assets to satisfy that judgment. And the website Onion wants to buy InfoWars that he has. Alex Jones said that he is going to start up another company, and you won't be able to keep him off the radio. The Chicago voters are stuck with America's worst mayor. And this mayor, I think his name's Johnson, he has a 21% approval rating. He ran on a far left, progressive, socialist, democratic platform, was elected, and he is in the office until 2027. They've tried to recall him, but he is heading towards the lowest approval rating in the history of mayors in the city of our country. And they are issuing a warning to New York that if New York elects Mandami, the same thing is going to happen. So I do not think it's the Democrats' best interest to put up candidates that are far left, socialistic type candidates. Again, we are a middle of the road country. The Democrats need to get tougher on crime. They need to get tougher on immigration. They need to talk about affordability of housing. They need to make sure that America remains strong. You must adopt some of these principles from the MAGA movement, or which Trump has promoted, or they're going to be left in never, never land and never get back to the majority. There was a murder that took place. A mother had posted on TikTok that she thought she had the perfect family. She ended up killing herself, massacred her children in a New Hampshire murder-suicide. Her husband was suffering from cancer. It's really sad. Trump is doubling down on the Smithsonian museums and saying that he thinks it's too much focus on slavery, that there wasn't all bad about slavery, and he is scrubbing some of the different exhibits from the Smithsonian museums, especially the Smithsonian African American Museum. I think this is a really bad thing. Are you kidding me? There was some things good about slavery. And really, I heard somebody say, has he actually visited the Smithsonian museums? I haven't seen him in there. Do you think he's actually gone into the Smithsonian African American Museum, or it's just people telling him that he needs to do this? I think it's a disgrace. I don't know if anybody saw, there are these Frankenstein rabbits now that are popping up all over the country. They have horns coming out of their heads, their cheeks and everything. Don't know how that happened. Obviously, there's a gene that's mutating out there. The Kentucky judge that was shot and killed by a sheriff, turns out that the judge was running a brothel in the courthouse, that he was trading sex for favors with criminals that were coming before him, which is amazing. In South Carolina, was a worker, a mother of three children, who had to manage the entire Burger King in Columbia, South Carolina, for an 8-hour shift by herself. Handle the drive-through, handle the fries, handle cooking the burgers, handled the cashier. Um, they applauded her for doing it, and 2 weeks later they fired her because she was late for work because she had to take her three kids to school. Brian Kohlberger in Idaho, uh, we're starting to see every day different things being released, that he was a Yankees fan and things. But the real irony is that he's getting harassed and tormented by all of the prisoners who are uh, keeping him up at night because they're speaking through the vents and telling him they're going to beat him up and they're going to rape him. He's filed a sexual harassment complaint because they're talking about what they're going to do to him sexually. So uh, karma's a bitch. Pete Alonso for the New York Mets now has the all-time home run record at 253 homers. It's so amazing now that they're giving him all of these accolades when last year they didn't want him and they didn't re-sign him until the end of the free agency period. Um, Michael Phelps has issued a dire warning to the Olympic swimming community. He said that the governing body is ruining swimming, that we are falling further and further behind uh, in the world, and that it needs to change on how we train our swimmers and how we get them ready for the Olympics. He's offered his services, and they have declined. John Wall, who was a great guard, the number one pick in the draft from Kentucky in 2012, is retiring at 34. He averaged 18 points for his career, was a five-time All-Star. Probably could have been a lot better, but missed probably half his playing time with injuries. So with that said, now let's go to some of the other issues. I've talked about Nancy Mace and how this is really troublesome, that Congress people have absolute immunity if they act within the course and scope of their employment in any capacity, or they give a speech as a member of the House and they tie it to any pending legislation that they may have or any other legislation. They're free to defame and slander somebody. And again, we can't do that to them because federal employees are protected under the law from being harassed, which is really, troublesome to me as an ordinary citizen. My friend Chuck Thompson is in the background here. That's okay, Chuck. He's looking at, Chuck's a lawyer, labor lawyer. He's looking at all my bobbleheads. I think it's important that, these talks that we have every week, you're learning more and more about the legal system. We're learning more and more about the laws and how that they can be fair to ordinary citizens, or they can be very penal towards ordinary citizens. But the more we're armed with knowledge and the truth, the more that we can voice our opposition to these things. So let's move on and see what else we're going to talk about. Eric Bowman, who is named in the Nancy Mace things with John Osborne and Brian Musgrave and her ex-fiance Patrick Bryant. He was arrested yesterday on domestic violence charges in a horrific video that I saw yesterday for the first time in 2016. He hit, he threw into the wall, he punched, he grabbed her hair. It's all on video. I don't know why it has taken so long to arrest him and charge him for this. The DOJ lost another ruling yesterday. Another New York judge turned down their request to release grand jury information. According to some of the congressional committees, they're going to release some of that Epstein information. Again, I think it's important the more sunlight that we could see on the Lepstein matter, on how he got such a light sentence in 2008, the better we will understand it. Um, Again, I talked about Trump's executive order to end mail-in voting. That's not going to fly. Voting is a local state issue and a local government issue. Um, it's just not something that I think is going to uh, get any traction. He benefited from mail-in voting in a lot of the states. It's not only just Democrats benefit from it. You know, military men who are serving over country and women, they send in mail-in ballots too. So that's another problem with that. Um, so with that said, done with the weekly update. EB out. Thanks for listening. See you next week.